So yes, we're back to the mighty Muir Hill. So this video is a follow-on from our first video, and if you haven't seen that, go back and check it out, part one. So part one dealt with the formation of the Mir Hill company, its history, the first tractors that they built, the 101, the Series 1, the development of that, how they came about. We spoke about that in depth. So if you want to check out that video, it's up there to be looked at. This video is looking at the Series 2, the Series 3, and ultimately the demise of the Muir Hill tractor. What became, but why it wound up the way that it did. It had a pretty abrupt and quick ending. So we'll speak about that and the reasons for that and what became of the company after that. So that's it for today. So good morning, everybody, and you're very welcome back to the Agri-Motive Farm Machinery YouTube channel. My name is Alan, for anyone that doesn't know, and to all our new subscribers. I think we got about 100 new subscribers since last week, after last week's video. So thanks a million to everybody that has subscribed, to everybody that has liked, everybody has shared and commented. Loads of comments after last week's video. Very popular video. It's flying up in the views. Great reaction to a very unique tractor. That we will be doing more on in the future. I have gotten some more information. I've been contacted by a couple of people that were involved with Massey Ferguson around that time, and we're putting together a little bit more information. Hopefully we can get a second video up on that, a little bit more in depth about the history of that. I'd also like to point out today, today's video is the Mir Hill. So for anyone that doesn't know, or anyone, if you have a Mir Hill, or if you like the tractors, if you're based in Ireland or Northern Ireland, there is an Irish Muir Hill Tractor Club. So the Irish Muir Hill Tractor Club is based in Monaghan. So I'd just like to give them a shout out. They did contact me after, someone from the club, I assume, contacted me after my last Muir Hill video, just to say if I give a shout out. So here it is, here's a shout out. Anyone that's interested in Muir Hill, check them out. I think they have a Facebook page or something. So if you check out their Facebook page, the Irish Muir Hill Tractor Company. So if you have a tractor, if you're into it, Muir Hill, check them out. And indeed, if anyone else would like a shout out, if you've got a tractor run coming up or something for charity that you'd like to promote a little bit, please don't hesitate to give me an email. Drop me an email, send me some information. I'd be more than happy to give a shout out to anyone that is doing that for charity, especially a tractor run or something like that. Don't be afraid to contact me, and I'd be more than happy to give a shout out to at least one a week. So that's it. So so without further ado, we're going to move on, and we're going to deal with this week's video, which is again Muir Hill Series 2 and Series 3. And again, I'd just like to say a big thank you to Heritage Machines. So most of the information that I have here, a lot of it I put together, has come from Heritage Machines again, and the excellent write-ups that they have on their website. Some fantastic stuff there. So if you're into your vintage machines, as I said before, tractors or cars or anything, trains or stuff like that, to have on at heritagemachines.com is a great website. I'd go and check them out. So Muir Hill, so just a quick glance back over the company. So in 1966, as we said, Muir Hill, a firm based in Gloucestershire and best known for its construction of industrial machinery, produced its first agricultural tractor, the 101. This six-cylinder tractor was based on the Ford 5000 skid unit, was powered by a 108 horsepower Ford 2704E engine, and was designed by the same engineer that was the brainchild behind the earlier Northrop 5004 tractor, hence the 101 having much in common with the earlier model. So unlike Northrop, however, the 101 was an instant success. Its rugged design and simplicity provided ideal for the rigours of tough farm work as well as industrial applications. It was joined in 1969 by the very similar 110 or 110, whatever way you like to put it, the only difference being the fact that it was powered by the Perkins six-cylinder engine. So that same year, a much bigger version appeared too. That was the huge 161. So this behemoth was 163 horsepower tractor, and it was also powered by a Perkins engine, but this time it was the mighty V8. Then in 1971, the 101 gained considerably more power when its engine was swapped in favour of the Ford 2715E unit of 120 horsepower. This version will be short-lived, however, as the new Series 2 Muir Hill tractors were destined to appear the following year. So the Series 2 tractors They were built on the same strengths as the original models, keeping the same high clearance central drive line, equal size wheels, four-wheel drive system and angular tin work that was cheaper than using the Ford bonnets as competitors, county commercial cars and roadless traction did. The Ford gearbox was also retained, although it took a few years before the dual power option became available on the Series 2 range, so that doubled the number of forward gears from 8 to 16. Now though, it was a proper cab with a factory-fitted unit. This is a factory-fitted unit. So the tall cab was a huge improvement over the old safety cab on the first Muir-Hill tractor, which had been very crude and simple to say the least. The flat floor cab not only had a sliding door on each side, giving excellent and easy access once you had climbed the steep steps to the high perch, but was also mounted on rubber to give a much quieter ride for the operator, reducing noise, harshness and vibration from the skid unit. The cab was the main improvement of the Series 2 and it had been given a great deal of consideration in development, with the end result being a cab well in advance of its time and even ready to meet the maximum sound level legislation that will come into effect in 1976, which was 4 years later. So as part of the Series 2 range, the 101 was replaced by the 121 model using the same Ford 2715E six-cylinder engine that its predecessor had used from 1971, rated at 120 horsepower. The 111 replaced the 110 and continued to offer a Perkins-powered alternative to the Ford engine that was used in the 121. Using a 110 Perkins 6354 engine, this was now actually the smallest offering of the lineup. The tractors were based on the Ford Force 5000 model, but you had to look closely to see evidence of a stolen machine. The Mir Hill the company, replaced every cosmetic aspect of the 5000 in favour of its own components. So this really made it stand out from the 5000 and from the similar counties. You had to really look into the bones of it to see its Ford DNA. So perhaps surprisingly, the original flagship 161 model carried on in production next to the Series 2 models right up until 1975. This was perhaps because this beast of a machine had, from its inception in 1969, been available with a substantial factory-fitted cab, not as well appointed as those fitted to the Series 2, so the 111 and the 121, but adequate to remain in production until a new replacement model was ready to take on the flagship role. So that finally happened in 1975 when the 171 replaced the 161. The new tractor featured the Series 2 cab and being even more powerful than its predecessor thanks to its Perkins V8 540 engine producing nothing short of 170 brake horsepower. To cope with this power, the Ford transmission was replaced by a sturdier, fuller gearbox on the yellow flagship, providing 10 forward speeds and 2 reverse. Unlike the impressive 161, which had boasted twin exhaust stacks, the 171 had to manage with just one bonnet mounted stack. This did inevitably lead to the 171 not looking and sounding quite as distinctive as the 161, although an 8-cylinder engine obviously still produced some serious music. And overall, the 171 was a very impressive tractor with a larger stature than its Series 2 stablemates. In fact, the 171 was one of the largest tractors available in Britain in the mid-1970s and would remain, albeit uprated Series 3 form, the most powerful tractor to be built in the UK until County unveiled its 1884 TW model in 1980. So, although 4 dual power transmission options were not actually offered on the 111 and the 121 until quite late in the production life of the Series 2 tractors, it soon became a popular choice as it gave a much wider range of gear ratios with high and low gears in each of the main ratios being available at the touch of a switch. All 3 Muir-Hill Series 2 tractors from 110 to 170 horsepower filled an important niche in industrial applications as well as in agriculture. Alternative transmission options and other features were also listed for industrial use that were not included on the agricultural specification machines. These 3 tractors were very popular, and although not as successful sales-wise as the county and roadless products of the same, roughly the same power range, the yellow Muir-Hill tractors did have some advantages over the competition. Perhaps the most important of these was its ability to turn a much tighter circle than the county big wheelers, despite still being of equal size wheels, four-wheel drive configuration. This was made possible by the tractor's higher ground clearance, and the front axle design was a centrally mounted prop shaft type. This ability to turn tightly had many benefits, particularly when working on small fields where it was not possible or desirable to have large headlands. The Muir-Hill's high ground clearance plus excellent manoeuvrability meant that these tractors were also ideal for such specialist tasks such as hauling trail pea viners that we spoke about in the first video, that required the tractor to straddle the pre-cut sward or peas as the trail viner picked them up behind. The added comfort added by the new cabs of the Series 2 on the 111 and the 121 also provide a much better workplace for the sort of jobs that involve 12-hour shifts, behind the wheel. The Series 2 tractors were eventually replaced entirely in 1978 when the new Series 3 range arrived with an even better cab and a wider selection of models on the price list. The Series 2 range had proved a great success for the company and had taken the Mir Hill agricultural tractor from the first generation and honed it into a tractor fit for the 1970s. Although not as coveted today as the county machines, anybody that used to work Series 2 Muir Hill tractor regularly will tell you that they were far superior to the competition and probably the best four-wheel drive tractor of the time. Every tractor mark has a following, but it seems that those who used the Muir Hill in anger back in the 1970s and the 80s will more often than not retain a fondness for the yellow giants long afterwards. The 171 was a huge tractor in the mid-1970s and was the largest tractor in the UK at the time. The rear linkage was large enough to tackle the biggest implements of that period, while the Series 2 cab was perched higher up than the smaller tractors in the range, making this tractor look even more imposing. And although their numbers were always less than other makes, whenever a working day is graced by the presence of one, they certainly seem to garner plenty of attention. So the Series 3. So Muir Hill launched the Series 3 range of tractors in 1978, building on the success of the Series 2 range with an updated design that was ready for the new decade. There were more models to choose from and in the range, starting at 116 horsepower, Perkins powered 111 and the 132 horsepower 121. Next came a new model, so the 141, which was available fitted with either a Perkins 132 horsepower engine or a 143 horsepower Ford unit, while at the top of the range sat the mighty impressive 177 horsepower 171. With effectively 5 models to choose from on the Muir Hill tractor range had never been so expansive or so sophisticated. Tractor sales were also very buoyant during the latter half of the 1970s, and expectations for the new range were obviously very high, following on from the popularity of the Series 2. So sales remained high at a high level during the 1970s, turned into the 1980s, but then it all started to go downhill, all started to go wrong. That's not to say the Muir Hill tractor Series 2 they weren't what the farmers wanted or that the designs were outdated. Indeed, Muir Hill tractors were still renowned for their pulling ability and extreme ruggedness, and they remained the tractor of choice for many farmers and agricultural contractors. But the problem was that major tractor manufacturers were starting to catch up, so Ford, Massey Ferguson, John Deere, International Harvester were all beginning to put more emphasis on producing factory-built four-wheel drive versions of their own popular models. So when you look at them coming into the early 80s, late 70s into the early 80s, you had the likes of Ford with the TW30. So obviously, big tractor came in four-wheel drive. You had the John Deere 40 series, so you would have had the 4240S and the 4440 four-wheel drive, mechanical and hydraulic four-wheel drive. You had the Massey Ferguson 2000 series, obviously in four-wheel drive, a big tractor in four-wheel drive. International with their 1455 XL. And then you had the Fendt favourite, the 600 range. So they were starting the Fendt tractors were starting to hit the market as well. And these were all, Ford tractors. There were John Deere tractors, there were Fendt tractors, whereas, the likes of County that we'd spoken about before and the likes of Muir Hill that were taking someone else's design and turning it into something of their own, they were always going to suffer because they were in direct competition with their supplier, basically, especially when it came to Ford. So somewhat inevitably, it didn't take long for these new competitively priced machines to start making serious inroads into the niche market that conversion builders like Muir-Hill had created. What's more, the larger mainstream manufacturers were also producing more powerful tractors than that of what the Muir-Hill 6-cylinder models could, and it was often these machines were always available with four-wheel drive. So again, your John Deere's, your 46, your 4850s and that, when they come out, the 4650s and that, big high plus 200 horsepower plus tractors. Muir Hill were in serious competition at this stage. It should be remembered that even by the mid 1980s, an 85 horsepower tractor was seen by many farmers as being a big enough machine. But larger holdings had a requirement for larger machines, and so from 1969, tractor builders such as Ford began to offer the 6-cylinder 8000 and 9000 series models in the UK as well as in North America. However, these were only two-wheel drive models, and Ford didn't seem interested in offering a four-wheel drive version at that stage, which left the market free for the likes of County and Muir-Hill to build their four-wheel drive conversions. But by 1977, the big Ford 6-cylinder tractors had metamorphosized into the 8700, the 9700, and these were offered in four-wheel drive, albeit with unequal size wheels, smaller at the front to minimize, maximize the turning circle. At that time, Muir-Hill was producing its own Series 2 model range, with the 121 being similar to the 8700 in power output, although it offered superior traction and much better weight distribution thanks to better ground clearance and its larger equal size wheels. In fact, the 9700 was trounced by the Muir-Hill 171 in terms of available power and traction thanks to its equal size wheels. The 171, like the 161 before it, was rightly seen as the pinnacle of tractor size, at least in terms of tractors built in Britain and making use of a rigid chassis. The nearest thing to it was the County 1474, based originally on the Ford 9700, but with 149 horsepower compared to the 171 to 177 horsepower. The County was a much smaller machine. However, that all changed in 1979 when Ford launched the TW range of three models, with the largest being the TW30, having an output of 188 horsepower. The factory-fitted four-wheel drive, albeit still with smaller size front wheels. This meant the Series 3 version of the Muir-Hill 171 was now up against real competition, a true rival, when County used the TW30 as the base for its new 1884 model. The competition in the sector that Muir-Hill had once dominated suddenly became, decidedly tough. And that's without the larger 6-cylinder tractors being sold in the UK by, Massey Ferguson with their 2000 series, John Deere with the 40 series, both of which offered four-wheel drive options. A further blow to the conversion builders came in 1981 when Ford announced its new Series 10 tractors. All but the smallest of these was offered with an option of four-wheel drive, which left the independent conversion builders effectively having to compete with their own skid unit supplier. So in 1982, as 1982 rolled around, it was clear that Muir-Hill tractor sales had started to suffer badly and they were falling below profitability levels. So with a degree of inevitability, tractor production would finish at Gloucestershire in October 1982, making the Series 3 the last generation of the big yellow machines. So the cessation of tractor production coincided with a change of hands when Muir-Hill's parent company, Babcock International, took the decision to sell Babcock Construction Equipment Limited, of which Muir-Hill was a part, to Wiebau AG, based in West Germany. However, Wiebau's parent company, the German IBH Group, ran into financial difficulties of its own in 1983, and various parts of the business had to be sold off. Muir-Hill and Wingett were run by the receivers until June 1984, still producing construction equipment and rough terrain forklifts. Then the operation was bought by Sanderson Forklifts, based in Lincolnshire. According to Stuart Gibbard's excellent Ford tractor conversion book, Sanderson's finished building three Muir-Hill 171 tractors that had remained uncompleted at the factory in Gloucestershire for almost 2 years. These were the last off the line and were sold minus cabs to British Steel for heavy haulage duties. But any thought that there may have been any resurrection of the Mir Hill tractor production were dashed in 1990 when the Sanderson themselves went into liquidation and Muir Hill was bought by Aveling Barford of Grantham in Lincolnshire. Soon after this, Muir Hill business was bought by Lloyd Loaders Limited, based near Halifax. So this company had become experts in rebuilding Muir Hill loader shovels and even produced its own conversion in 1985, the same year that it produced the Myth Home 131 that we spoke about in the last video, tractor named after the Myth Home works in which it was built. Fitted with a Ford 6-cylinder engine and dual power transmission, the new machine will very, very closely resemble a Muir Hill tractor, and several were built before production ceased in the 1990s. And they basically were Muir Hill, just in a different colour. So the last true Muir Hill tractors may have been built a long time ago, but their legacy certainly remains alive. It's hard to overstate the importance of the original 101 model in terms of its use as an agricultural tractor, as well as excelling at being an industrial machine in many, many applications. This was a relatively compact 108 horsepower tractor, 6-cylinder engine, equal-sized wheels, 4-wheel drive that revolutionised many farming operations. Used by farmers and contractors alike, the 101 was superb at heavy haulage work, including ploughing, mould draining, subsoiling and cultivating. It was also often the tractor of choice for, as we said, the P-viners, and many 101 tractors were used on the front of Mather and Platt and FMC trail viners, providing motive power for these very large machines in all weather conditions. The 101 was the best choice for this operation thanks to its high ground clearance so that it could easily straddle the rows of cut peas left by the swatters, and its tight turning circle for a 4-wheel drive machine made it manoeuvrable enough to turn effectively on the headlands. Its legendary tractive abilities also came to the fore when haulage of these large P-viners in wet conditions. The Series 2 range built on that success with greater comfort for the driver in a properly designed quiet cab, while the Series 3 represented the pinnacle of luxury thanks to its aptly named space cab. In short, the Muir Hill tractors were exactly what was needed by many farmers and in particular agricultural contractors. Even up until recent times, drainage contractors have retained their old Muir Hill machines for pulling stone carts, as these old stagers have continued to beat modern machines when it comes to delivering traction in difficult conditions and doing so both affordably and reliably. Luckily, many enthusiasts have had the foresight to save plenty of their Muir Hill tractors and to also restore them to as new condition. It's great that these impressive machines have been saved for posterity and can continue to impress further generations as they once did when brand new in the 60s, the 70s and the 80s. And I want to say that a lot of them are kept for posterity, or they're being restored to just be admired. A lot of them are still out there working, and I did not realize how many of these tractors were in Ireland alone until I had done that video, and a lot of people got in contact with me. A lot of people sent me pictures, sent me stories, and the Mir Hill Club themselves in Monaghan, and they have some fantastic pictures on their Facebook page from a meeting that they had. So yeah, they're still out there, they're still working. Yes, they've been shown off at shows and they're going on road trips and stuff, because they're a very, very iconic machine and they do stand out. They're very, very unique. So that's it. That's the history. That's Muir Hill. And as always, if you drove one, if you have one, if you had one, if you blew the engine up in one, if you turned one over, I don't care, whatever. If you have a story about a Muir Hill tractor, please give me a shout. Let me know. Get in contact and be sure to drop something into the comments. And please, if you haven't liked and you haven't subscribed to the channel, please consider subscribing. I know we've got nearly 3,000 subscribers now, but I'm getting regularly 7, 8, 9, 10,000 views on each video. So that means half the people that are watching probably aren't subscribed. So if you wouldn't mind just hitting the subscription button, it all helps the channel along. So that's it for this week. That's it from Muir Hill, and thanks very much for watching, and I'll be back with more stories this time next week. Thanks.